This is a Flying Cow production.
There was a man named Worrell, Ernest B. Worrell. Let's celebrate this champion.
Well, hello and welcome back to Around the Worrell, our Patreon exclusive podcast, of course, talking all about Ernest P. Worrell. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and here with me, as always, is my co-host, the litigator, Lauren Collins. Lauren, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. Sun just came back out after a rainstorm we were having here a few minutes ago. So already the day's looking up.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I mean, I just took my dog out in a little bit of the rain. It's still sprinkling a little bit here, but I also live right under tree cover, which is really nice when it's like hot and stuff because you've got shade everywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah. But when it rains, I mean, I will say you don't get the brunt of the rain, which is also nice.
Yep.
But it takes longer for it to stop completely because there's still moisture trapped in those leaves and it's still like a little bit falling. So, yeah, I took my dog out to walk around in that, and he hears rain at all. He doesn't want to go outside. So I usually have to end up picking him up, carrying him to a tree. And if it's raining like a decent bit, he'll pee and then he'll run back in.
Yeah.
But if it's not, once he gets to the tree, he'll realize, oh, it's fine. And then he'll start running around. Sometimes he'll do that in a little more rain than I want him to. And I'm just like, okay, let's go in. Let's go inside. Oh, but yeah. That, like I said, interesting stuff going on here. We also had some interesting stuff going on this weekend.
Yes, we did.
We just got back from Ernest Days. And because I swear everybody else has an angle that like shows their entire torso or something, but I can't figure out how to do that. Mine is only like from the top of my torso up. So you never can see the cool stuff that I've got on. But I am currently wearing my Camp Kickakee shirt because we went to Ernest Days this weekend. And it was pretty interesting, I would say. Wouldn't you, Lauren?
Yeah. I had a lot of fun going up there. It was outside Nashville. A
Yeah.
lot more people there than I expected, to be honest. I figured it was
Yeah.
a small affair, but we had to park way out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had to walk quite a bit in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's just in a campground.
Yep.
The same area that they filmed Ernest Goes to Camp.
Montgomery Bell State Park. Yep.
Yeah. And they had, so we could walk around and actually see a lot of the filming locations for that film, which, as I've said, is pretty much my favorite Ernest film. So that was quite a treat for me. They also had a couple of people there signing autographs. None of the bigger names, obviously. Unfortunately, a lot of them have passed or are higher up in years. But they did
there was
have
a little memorial to those folks, in fact, especially from the Ernest Goes to Camp itself.
Yeah. That inside the main area, they actually had some production stills. Like they had different areas for different films.
Yes.
I will say though, I think they had a couple of like props from Ernest from Slam Dunk Ernest.
They had the shoes.
Yes, they had the shoes.
One of the guests had brought the magic shoes.
Yeah.
There were also, as I pointed out to you, there were some sketches, some production sketches, storyboards for Slam Dunk Ernest as well.
Yeah. But otherwise, it was mostly Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yep.
There was some Ernest Goes to Jail stuff.
Yep.
There was some Ernest Scared Stupid. Now, I was surprised that there wasn't like a room dedicated to Ernest Saves Christmas.
Yeah. Well,
That was the one that was
too many small little
conspicuous by its
alcove rooms.
absence to me.
There weren't wasn't a lot of space in there.
No, but I mean, there were areas that they could have
They
dedicated
could have,
to if they
um,
wanted to.
particularly since
Um,
the 2 rooms they had completely set up to be for Ernest and for, uh well, it was Scared Stupid, because I took a picture of
yes,
authentic Bulgarian Miak photo.
yes,
But yeah,
yes.
most of those were just, they weren't even production stills for the most part. They were just shots from the movie because
Yeah, yeah,
they
that's
showed the special effects in the
yeah, yeah,
basically it's 8 by 11 printouts.
yeah.
Um, but
But yeah, they didn't
there
have
was one other prop of note I remember because I took a
okay.
photo of it. There was one of the troll pods from Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yes, that
And
was
and
pretty
a canister.
cool.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm, they didn't have anything from Rides Again, Goes to School, Goes to
What would
Africa,
there
in the
be from Rides
army.
Again other than the cannon? It just or the crown, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, but still some production stills,
Yes, true.
would have been
Yeah. I
interesting.
mean, for instance, there was a production script from Ernest Goes to Camp. There could have been scripts
Okay.
from themselves as well.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of call for those for the fans,
not so
to
much.
be honest. I
They're
mean,
they're
again,
in the eyes of Egoli. Those could have been there on display.
yeah.
The line for
Yeah,
those.
because those were really good props.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about Ernest Goes to School. It's not bad.
No.
So,
To be fair, though, I'm not sure what you would pull as a prop from that. I'm not sure what would be other again.
I
Again,
mean,
scripts and production stuff is
but like I said, most of it was just pictures.
pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they could have just printed out.
There were really only a few props. It was
Yeah.
mostly pictures, and honestly, most of the props were from Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yes.
With the exception of a few here and there. But yeah, I was surprised. And I mean, like I said, the biggest surprise was that there was nothing for Christmas.
Yes. Yeah, you're
Um,
right. At least on the production side of things, maybe that one was just too close to Disney. Like they just no one pried anything out of their hands back in the day.
yeah. Because I mean, that's the only one that is still on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, we forgot to mention there was a troll head.
yes,
Not mint condition, obviously, but
right.
surprisingly good condition.
Well, as you had mentioned, apparently one of the people that I guess performed one of the trolls
Mhm.
basically hit up the people running Ernest Days and were like, "Hey, I can come. Can
Yeah.
I participate?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I believe they were amongst the people signing autographs.
Yep.
Yeah, we also had Elizabeth's mom from Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yep. And
Um,
the assistant, the warden's
the
assistant,
warden's
goes to
assistant,
jail.
who
Yeah.
doesn't say much
Yeah.
in the film, but he's in most shots with
Yeah.
the warden in the film. So yeah. And I think we never did figure out who the other guy was.
No, we never did.
No. I did end up I did mean to end up going to say hello, but by the time we got done doing everything else we did, they had gone to sit down, which was understandable.
That's true. While we were there always was a short line to see all those folks.
Yeah, for quite a bit, but yeah, we also they had some activities down there. They had canoeing and archery. We did not go canoeing because we did not have adequate sunscreen.
Nope.
But we did go do some archery, and neither one of us were great, but Lauren was much better than I was.
I was pretty happy with how I did, considering like more than half my arrows I think were missing fletchings, so they're just not going to fly straight.
Well, and also in my defense,
Yeah.
my bow was missing the knock
Okay.
bead
Oh yeah.
that shows you where to place your arrow
Or
in
to be
order to
perfectly level,
shoot
yeah.
straight. Yeah. So I was having to guess. And I have done some archery in the past,
Yeah.
mostly when I was much younger. So it's been quite a while, but I was decent then. And I was horrible. Like the closest I got was I completely missed the target the first time. And the closest else that I got was just kind of like all in the upper area because I was just trying to figure out without the knock how to aim closest to get, and I kept having to point down in order to hit anything.
I mean, admittedly, I did find it a little awkward because they were sitting, the targets were sitting on the ground and relatively close to us. I mean, they were, I don't know,
Yeah, they
15,
weren't far.
20 feet, but they weren't too far away. But it meant you're literally having to point the bow down to like shoot at the target.
True.
Which is just an awkward position to be in. But no, honestly, it reminded me. I enjoy archery. I'm tempted to buy a bow. I have a friend online who teaches archery, and he's willing to instruct me in purchasing a new one if I so choose.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. My backyard's well suited for it too. So
well, there you go.
yeah,
There you go. Very nice. All right. So I mean, that's pretty much all of the preliminary stuff. So
oh, and we had some very good barbecue in Murfreesboro.
yes, that is true. We had some good barbecue in Murfreesboro.
Yes, at the
I
Slick
got
Pig.
yes, the Slick Pig. When you were first getting the name of it, you got it. You were using your little auditory thing for and it sounded like the GP or the woman in the automated voice.
Oh, the voice, yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
the automated voice. It sounded like it said the Slick Pick.
Yes,
At
which
first, and I
sounds
was
like
like-
an instant lottery game, but yes.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a barbecue place, but
No.
yeah, I got more food than I needed to eat.
Yep.
And unfortunately did not have a way to save it. But yeah, it was very good. And then I had some decent seafood afterwards. Lauren unfortunately didn't have the best time. I mean, you enjoyed yourself for most of it. It was just
right
there
up till
at
the end. Yes, it was tasty right up till the end.
Yeah. An
But-
unfortunate situation, but
But the barbecue makes up for it. That was
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
That it is. Next time I'm gonna up in Tennessee, I'm gonna detour by there. That was so good.
yeah. No, that was definitely worth a stop.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we're getting to the point where we pretty much have to talk about this movie.
We could talk more about the banana pudding. I mean,
I mean, yeah, they did bring out the banana pudding in Tupperware tubs.
yes, it was like my grandma's Mima's banana pudding.
Was it?
Like my Mima's?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I would assume you're not talking about I mean, I never had anyone I called Mima.
Mima. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I am
Mine
from the
was-
South. I had a Mima.
Yeah. I am too. But we called my grandmother Nanny.
Nanny. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a Mima and a Gamma.
There you go.
Yes, but no, Mima made banana pudding like the kind we had there, with that kind
Yeah.
of very sugary meringue on top
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. See, I had a southern grandma who was Nanny, and then I had a northern grandma. She was grandma. No, sorry, grandma.
Grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
No,
was
no, I mean,
that was the closest I could get away with.
I suppose if you want to count them as southern, the further northern of my grandma's was lived in Tucker. But
Okay.
yeah, no, one was from South Carolina, one was from Tai.
Oh wow.
You ever heard of Tai?
I mean, I've heard of it. What is it referring to?
It is a town in South Georgia, outside
Okay.
outside Cordele. If you
And
had
it's just
heard of
called
Cordele.
Tai.
It's called Tai. It's two
Oh, wow.
words. TY space TY. It is a town of about 500 people. At least these days.
Wow.
It was probably about the same size then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is such a small town. It almost got taken off like official state maps some years ago.
Wow.
There was they also tried to take off some town that I think the governor was from, so there was pushback,
Wow.
and then like it didn't happen. But yeah, Tai is small. Its biggest claim to fame, to be honest, is probably it gets briefly name checked in the musical Cotton Patch Gospel when they are just listing off towns with weird names in Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Arkansas, and we have towns named Toad Suck and Rooster Poot. So beat that.
Rooster Poo.
Rooster Poot.
Rooster Poot. Okay.
Yeah.
Also great. That is.
Yeah.
Man, I want to mail something, get a postmark back from Rooster Poot.
Yeah, and every time I mention Toadsuck, people get crazy about. But they had festivals there,
Yeah.
literally called Toadsuck Days.
Why was there not an Ernest movie where he went to Toadsuck, Arkansas? That could have been the title. Ernest Goes to Toadsuck, Arkansas.
All right. Well, we've been, dancing around it this whole time. I think it is time to get into the movie. We are, of course, today talking about Ernest Goes to Africa. That's right, folks. We have finally gotten here. It was released in 1997. It was directed by John Cherry, written by John Cherry. And there's nothing about music here. I don't think there was much music.
I tried to search it at the very, very beginning
Yeah.
because the very first song we heard was from the tribe that was sort of marching through
Yeah.
the bush or whatever.
I think though that might have just been like stock music.
It may have been stock music. The
In
thing
fact,
is,
I'm pretty sure that any music that they did use was just stock music.
oh, I imagine it was. But the thing was, as I was listening to it, it reminded me of Lady Smith Black Mambazo. And so
Oh, okay.
I actually
Sure.
immediately Googled to see whether or not it was them.
Yeah.
Whether they had just borrowed the tracks. But
Right.
I couldn't get a confirmation of that. And I didn't, by the time I got to the end of the movie, I didn't think to look in the credits for it.
Right.
So.
But it starred Jim Varney and Linda Cash.
Mhm.
And for anyone who's not familiar with the film, basically the breakdown is that Ernest, well, basically he gets dropped in the middle of at the beginning of the film, we see a Indiana Jones type steal an artifact from a very stereotypical African tribe. And then these artifacts get passed off eventually in a flea market where Ernest is shopping to try to impress his potential girlfriend, played by Linda Cash. And he ends up making a yo-yo out of it. And because of that, both he and his potential love interest Renee get caught up in the thieves, and shenanigans ensue. I will say, just to start off with, the idea of Ernest as a clueless spy is actually a good one.
I thought the exact same thing midway through.
But it needs a good story.
Yes.
Not this one.
Yep.
I feel like if this story had come out during the days of, their partnership with Touchstone with Disney, then we might have actually gotten a pretty decent story, a pretty decent film.
Yeah.
But this was a mess.
It
Just
was. Yeah.
straight up was a mess. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, there's
Well, here's the thing. I'd like to start off honestly.
Okay.
I would want to start off with a brief recap of what happens, but at the beginning of the movie,
I mean,
what
that's
my
kind
notes
of
was.
yeah.
I literally was confused as to what the plot was at the start of the movie. It involves, like you said, a couple of artifacts being stolen from a tribe in Africa,
Yes.
which, for reasons that are not clear, end up back in America.
Yeah.
Because someone's like running through a flea market.
Right. Well,
Um,
I mean, they do say apparently a guy hired a couple of guys to steal these artifacts
Yeah.
and bring them back to him.
Yes.
But at some point on their way to him, the guy gets impatient and tries to steal the artifacts from the people he hired to steal them. And then that guy who stole the artifacts from the people who originally stole the artifacts decides to run off with them on his own. And then that's how they end up in the flea market.
Yeah, I think this illustrates the problem with that underlying premise. Is just like that was inordinately complicated with a bunch of characters who don't really appear in this film for the most part.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
we do see all of the people involved
I mean,
in
we
that
see
plot.
them, but like some of them don't even have names in IMDb, like as characters. I tried to determine like the the one who I assume was the one in the plane. I'm not certain about this, but who was then also running through the flea market. I'm not sure.
No. Okay, the guy who was in the plane
Yes.
is Mr. Thompson, the
Oh, that was Mr.
lead
Thompson.
villain that we see
Oh, it was.
through
Okay.
most of it.
I didn't back up. I was
Yeah.
watching a pretty low resolution YouTube version at the beginning of this film. Then midway through, fun fact, I will interrupt for this. I discovered
Yeah.
this is one of the 2 Ernest films I own.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least I think I also own Scared Stupid or something now.
Okay.
But because of this podcast.
Yeah.
But no, when I was looking at the Wikipedia page while I'm watching the film, I realized, oh, home media, it's on the Ultimate Ernest collection. I realized, like, wait a sec, I own the Ultimate Ernest collection. Let me like lean over here, just open this up. It's like, I've never opened it up, but yeah, I have a sealed copy of Ernest Goes to Africa and Ernest in the Army, so I can watch that next time.
Okay. All right. Well,
But yeah, that was at least a higher resolution version of this film.
I will say there are a couple of lines where he does mention that, you don't play well with others. You lost your last partner. He didn't catch his plane.
Yes.
There's references, light references, and also when I first saw him, I was like, is that the same guy? I mean, it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
really.
So in that
to
case,
be honest,
in that case,
because of the angle we first see him at.
Yeah, and
but
in pilots he turned around. Yeah, in that case, the fellow we then see running through the flea market, who's trying to steal the eyes of a goalie. It's like, I'm not sure why we're supposed to know who he is at all when he shows up in the film.
I will say they do name him in the film. I can't remember, and I can't.
But he's also literally not named in Wikipedia or in IMDb.
I will say though, I'm pretty sure he's a white dude in brown face. There's a few of them in this.
I am pretty sure IMDb lists him as the character Weasel.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because they do call him a weasel at one.
They call him Weasel. They do
a weasel and a snake.
They do call him by a name.
But, well, when they're referring to him, they use his name all the time.
Yes, they do.
But I can't remember because I don't care that much about this movie.
No. Incidentally, that actor, Tony Caprari, who again, not
white dude in brown face. Yeah.
He actually has a pretty substantial acting resume compared to the other folks here. But no, it was just really convoluted at the beginning there. I don't understand what all this heist business is with these characters. Then he himself's trying to steal them. He's stopped by 2 other guys who were then shot by Mr. Thompson. I don't know who they were entirely either. Like you said, if you strained hard enough and pieced together all the dialogue, apparently there was some logic behind it all, but it's unnecessarily complicated to just get these jewels into Ernest's possession.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he ends up with it. The Mr. Thompson, who again, I don't recall who he works for. He kind of is working for like this prince.
Yeah, he was apparently hired by Prince Kazim, who's played by Robert Whitehead.
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson played by Jamie Bartlett.
Yes.
If you're watching on the video, I don't have pictures of them because again, I don't care.
No, you probably don't need to show pictures of.
I also, I was gonna say, I also don't want to show pictures of Prince Kazim because again, he's a white dude in brown face.
That was uncomfortable.
There
were times, honestly, I wasn't entirely certain whether he was supposed to be playing a person of color or just a white guy who was a prince.
I mean, he is using, at least in most scenes, a thin accent.
He is using the accent, no doubt there. But he's also not painted up the same way Ernest is uncomfortably at one point in this film.
I mean, honestly, the shade that they use on Ernest is like unrealistic. It's like tan.
Yeah.
Paint.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But yeah, so the bad guys think Ernest is Agent 32. Again, I'm not entirely certain how they think he's a secret agent, considering the other people involved here no one are secret agents.
Well, because I was about to say, because
Um,
nobody else in this film is an agent.
no, but they
If
keep
there
calling him
were
Agent
other
32.
agents, I could get it. But yeah, we never get a payoff to who this Agent 32 that he thinks Ernest is. It's really just an incidental thing to call Ernest that never pays off, which, like most of this movie. It
Like most
just
of this movie. Um, Obviously, we're going to go on tangents for this kind of stuff because we don't need to talk about the actual content of the film by and large.
no.
But again, opportunity missed in terms of what they could have done. If we need to see the real Agent 32, the real Agent 32 should have been played by Jim Varney.
That would have been a great twist, honestly.
Yes. It's like we finally meet him, and it's just competent, sophisticated Jim Varney doing like a
Yeah, in a
British-
nice suit
in a suit.
and
yeah.
and shades, and in an earpiece. Yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
And then you have the fairly standard comic bit where Ernest, after meeting Agent 32, then has to imitate Agent 32. So it's Jim Varney doing an imitation of himself.
You and I are already writing a better movie.
We are, yeah, exactly. I kind of want to call it 00 Worrell, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what? Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. I don't think you can call it 00. I actually come to think, I'm almost
Is that
certain you can't.
copyrighted?
I think it's
term?
copyrighted.
I mean, I would assume 007, but is the term 00?
Because the 00 is, if I remember correctly, not an actual like British designation.
Sure.
It was a.
Okay.
I think it was actually a
A
creation
creation of Ian
of
Fleming.
Ian Fleming.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure I seem to recall.
Yeah, but that's parody. Could you not?
You could probably call him 00 Worrell like in the film or something like that. But as a title,
Oh, okay.
the reason why it's stuck in my head that I don't think you could do that is Darkwing Duck, the cartoon show,
Sure.
originally grew out of a pitch for a show called 00 Duck.
Oh, okay.
And one of the
Okay.
problems they ran into was that they couldn't get permission to use
To use
00.
the 00 designation. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I will say, there's a point at which in this film they refer to an Illinois Smith,
They do.
which I wrote down because I was like, didn't Ernest straight up refer to Indiana Jones in Ernest Rides Again?
There's really no reason why they couldn't refer to Indiana Jones, to be honest. I mean, legally speaking, they absolutely could.
Yeah, but they decide in this film to create a separate version called Illinois Smith.
Illinois Smith. But maybe
Yeah.
they thought it was funny. Maybe the guys got bad advice. Who knows?
Yeah.
No. But yeah, the bad guys come after Ernest because Ernest like leaves a business card somewhere. Again, sloppy plotting. I mean,
Yeah.
they're connected. For once, they actually do connect the dots there, but just it's for ridiculous reasons.
I was about to say, honestly, it makes no sense that he would even leave because all he needed to do, because basically what happens is the guy drops the the artifacts
Yeah.
in the
Like
a
two-
bin
two
that
for
says
one
$2
box.
for $1.
Yeah.
All Ernest needed to do was leave the seller is asleep.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to wake him up, so he just leaves on the guy's overalls $1 with his business card.
Mhm.
He didn't need to leave that business
Nope,
card. He just
he didn't.
needed to leave $1.
It's there for fun. Yeah.
I will say though, did you notice when the bad guys go back and they do wake the guy up? This guy that straight up looks like a redneck country bumpkin speaks with a New York accent. He's like,
Oh, no.
"Hey, what do you want here?" I'm just
I
like,
didn't notice that.
"What the fuck is that?"
I was more taken by the fact that he appeared to be cosplaying as Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2.
Yeah, I was about to say that's the thing. He had that straight up look.
Yeah.
And now here's the thing. It was not an authentic New York accent. So
No.
I do not think that this is a New York actor.
He's a
I
South
think
African actor.
that
He's
this
South
guy, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then it's possible that this guy just doesn't know the difference between a New York accent and a Southern
Oh,
accent.
entirely no. It's like do an American
Um,
accent. It's like sure.
I mean, there's two people know New York and Southern.
Southern.
Maybe he just knew one and didn't know that there was a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, okay, so this guy is putting on a New York accent to play a Southerner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot. You're right. These last two were shot in Johannesburg.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, or was it Cape Town?
Oh well. Let's see. I had it pulled up here a second ago.
Johannesburg. Okay, yeah, it was shot in Johannesburg. Yeah. But yeah, I was just like, that's an interesting choice.
Yes.
Um,
No, maybe the only they told him like do a voice out of a western, and the western he thought of was City Slickers, and
Yeah.
just
yeah. Hey, what are you doing here?
So yeah,
The great Southerner.
they find Ernest. They kidnap Linda Cash, who they think is his girlfriend. They torture her. Which I was like,
because they see him passing off
they see him
the
pass
bag that
Yes.
the eyes of a goalie were in.
Yes.
They don't know at this point that he has turned the eyes of a goalie into a yo-yo.
a yo-yo. Yes.
Yes.
So weirdly enough, yeah, they
Which-
actually see him pass off the actual merch. But
Yeah, I will say Jim Varney does a lot of pretty cool yo-yo tricks
Yeah.
in this film. Honestly, one of the more enjoyable parts of the film,
Yes.
watching Jim Varney perform these yo-yo tricks, which I'm assuming he actually knows how to do.
I think you're right. Also, another late in the day Ernest pitch here. We
Mhm.
could have had an Ernest movie where Ernest becomes a yo-yo champion. Like Forrest Gump at ping pong type of thing.
I mean, I don't, obviously that wouldn't have been a whole movie. It could have been like a side portion and something, but I mean, honestly, I liked the way that they used it here, that it was kind of like his secret weapon. Again, one of the only things in this film that I did actually have fun with was Ernest with the yo-yo. Honestly,
Well, I mean, it could have been used as the impetus for a larger plot if you want to send Ernest somewhere else. If you want to send like,
Sure.
I don't know, Ernest Goes to China or something like that. It's just like he ends up there because of a yo-yo championship.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it, with the idea of Ernest being a spy, I like the idea that his secret weapon is a yo-yo. I think
Also
that's
good.
actually pretty funny. I mean, I will say one of my biggest issues with this film is that in most of the other films, even if we weren't crazy about a lot of the stuff around it, the saving grace was also great Ernest performances.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in this.
There's crud, you're right, there's not.
And the few that there are like, not all of them are bad. I mean, some of them are problematic.
Yeah.
And then some of them are just weird. And then there's some that are just like mundane. It's almost like he's losing steam a little bit.
Well, and I mean, he was getting old at this point. I mean, he's only a couple of years away from passing away.
I was about to say, this was in 97. I don't know when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, but I mean, he did another movie after this. So, obviously he was still, able to, do stuff. I mean, we'll see how the last one is, if there's also a lack of, quality Ernest shtick. But yeah, there's just not a lot.
Yeah.
In this.
He developed a nagging cough about a year after this. And
Okay.
And
So he might have been already feeling the effects.
I imagine he probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, also just being a smoker for that long, just not great for your physical health.
No.
But no, one of the only notes I made about an actual performance of his in here where he was interesting, I thought, was, as awkward as it is, the when he was "Hey you," the brown face was bad. I did like he at least. I like the sort of the pitch of his voice in that.
I was about to say, you could still hear bits of his
Yes.
voice in it.
Because
I mean, I you know,
it was a deeper voice than Varney typically did for his
yeah,
character, and so
yeah,
like it was sort of deep and sonorous, and I liked that. It's a voice I haven't heard Ernest in the films do
yeah,
before, which was
yeah.
at least something different. Um,
Obviously, the stereotypical, South Asian voice, in the Indian, the Apu
yeah,
variant, basically. Um,
but it,
I mean, I will say at the time, if I watched this at the time, I might have gotten a kick out of it. But honestly, a lot of people were doing this shtick
yeah,
around this time.
yes,
So it's not like it was even creative.
no,
Um, I will say, um, something that I at least thought was interesting about that bit is that he goes into a bit with Thompson where he keeps like, and I mean, some of it was gross, but some of it was so off the wall that I'm like, okay, that's a little funny. But it was like, oh, great one. Oh, I'm not gonna do the voice. No,
yes,
absolutely not. But he was like, oh,
We're
great
just
one.
just a
Yeah,
little.
no, definitely not. But he was like, oh, great one, whose spittle is the,
Yeah,
is the gold of the Nile or so, just and like got into his sweat. I think even his urine, and it was like so bizarre that I was like, this is kind of funny, but like from a weird standpoint.
yeah,
It's like it's funny because of how odd it is.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do I got here? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Mention, yeah. Obviously, Ernest ends up in Africa because he gets kidnapped, and then he
Yeah.
falls out of the back of a truck because the kidnappers are dumb, and
Yeah.
then he just sort of meanders his way across Africa. He
Which
very probably ends
I
up
will say he's put in a bag,
put in a
and
bag.
they specifically have stapled the bag to the bottom of his hat so we can tell he's wearing his hat. And I wrote
Yeah,
down, was that really necessary?
yeah.
It's like we know he's wearing his hat. We don't need to see the hat equivalent on the bag. I
Yeah.
thought that was a little silly.
Somehow he manages to fall out of the truck like over a river. Then he
Yeah.
ends up where the truck was going anyway. To
Yeah.
then help break Renee out because she's being held captive now in
Yes.
Africa.
Yes.
And then they sort of wander through the savannah there for a bit. And then at the end of the movie, end up back with the same tribe from the beginning of the film, which is, throughout this film, like, I was afraid that, there was going to be some racism. And then
Mhm.
I thought like, oh, there's some here.
And we weren't disappointed.
Throughout the film, it's like, this isn't great, but just like I thought this was going to be worse than it is, and then we get to the end with like the cannibal tribe. It's just like,
Yep.
oh,
And oh, it is.
we were just holding this for the end. Then,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we're just throwing all the stereotypes and just this the climax of the film.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. They reveal that the guy that they caught who stole from them, they ate,
They ate him?
apparently.
well, I mean, it was pretty clear they planned to eat Ernest and Renee too for a while. They
Yeah,
have,
yeah, but I mean,
but yeah,
yeah.
when they're cooking a stew for them,
I mean, honestly, it could have been revealed that was a gag. That that was like
no,
a
no.
threat.
For a while, I was hoping it was going to be revealed as a gag. I also
Right.
figured, though, with the number of human
But
skulls
when-
around, it, probably not going for gag.
No. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, because earlier in the film, when Ernest had met some, not a tribe like that, but just
Yeah.
some rural folks in Africa, and it cuts away, and then it comes back, and he's just kind of charmed them by being a bumpkin.
I will say that is one thing. I will say I realized halfway through. I have seen parts of this movie. I don't think I've
Yeah.
seen the entire thing. But I have seen it's a knick-knack, Patty Jack. Give the frog alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 I
I have
would-
seen that scene.
I like the reference to that joke because I remember that joke as a kid.
Okay.
But, have you ever heard that joke?
I don't think I've heard the entire thing.
Oh, okay. I could tell you the joke now, but we could just save that for later.
I mean, you might as well. There's
might
not a
as
whole
well.
lot else to talk about.
All right. So, so the way the joke works is it involves a bank loan officer. I think, Patty Jack Johnson, whatever the case may
Okay.
be. He's working at the bank. One day, a frog comes in and comes to his desk and says he has business to do with the bank. And Mr. Johnson asks him, what is the issue you'd like? The frog says, I would like to borrow a large sum of money. I'd like to borrow $10,000. And the officer says, that's a lot of money to loan a frog. Do you have any collateral that you can offer? And the frog says, as a matter of fact, I do. And the frog reaches in his bag, because he's brought a bag, and he brings out this sort of ugly little statue. Looks like something he got out of a flea market or something like that. It says like this is the family heirloom. I'd like to use this as my collateral. And Mr. Johnson says, like, I don't think we've ever, granted, loaned money on this basis for that. I'm gonna have to go talk to my manager.
Sure.
So he goes back to his manager's office, knocks on her door, and she says, "Patty Jack, you can come on in." She's like, "Okay." And he goes in carrying the statue.
Yeah.
And he says, "Ma'am, like, I have a customer out here, a young frog who would like to borrow $10,000. But all he's offered for collateral is this statue. And I'm not sure if we can accept this." And his manager says, "It's a knickknack, Patty Jack. Give the frog a loan."
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously the best part of the joke we'd already heard.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I mean, that part I didn't mind so much. I will say, just kind of to go back just a little bit. I jotted down some notes. First of all, we in this world, I will say this film does kind of support our idea of a Worrelliverse, because there's absolutely you would have to forget that the other movies exist for parts of this to make sense. Because I mean, he's, at first I thought he was a mechanic, but apparently he's a gas station attendant that has like I guess a mechanics area next to it.
I much preferred the notion of Ernest as mechanic. I thought that was a new job for him to have, and then
but later on they're like, what about your job at the gas station? He's like, I quit that. And I was like, okay, all right. But yeah, so he does, he crushes, actually she crushes her own fucking car.
That's her fault.
Yeah, I'm not gonna throw that on Ernest. I did not enjoy any of that scene.
That entire scene.
The woman was annoying.
She was.
And yeah, so there was that. I will say though, there's a line where as he's initially trying to fix it, where he's like, women don't understand these things, and I'm like, oh, so on top of everything else we're doing in this movie, now Ernest is sexist. Great. But yes, when he first goes to talk to Renee, she says the reason she can't go out with him is because he's just a regular schmo, just like her, and that she wants somebody more exciting. And I'm like, oh, so you want somebody maybe that's been to jail or fought off trolls or, played semi-professional basketball, or something like that. Somebody who's constantly having adventures. That's what you're looking for. So I'm like, yeah, obviously this is in a different reality than all of the other Ernest movies. So I thought that was funny. Let's see.
On some level, I'm fine with the Ernest movies not sharing a continuity. It's like
I mean, yeah, I am too. I thought that was funny because that scene specifically supports our idea of the Worrelliverse.
Yeah. What did irk me about that though is, and it harkens back to something you raised for Slam Dunk Ernest, which is Ernest, when she's just complaining that Ernest isn't adventurous enough, and he responds by saying, yeah, he just wasn't adventurous as a kid. He didn't trick or treat more than 2 houses down. It's like, that doesn't sound like what Ernest would be like as a kid. Ernest sounds like he'd be the annoying kid who'd be going to every house in the neighborhood, like asking for candy.
And at the very least, following Vern everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
He's like,
I don't.
"Hey, Vern, let's go to this house. I've been there a bunch of times. They give me all these candy bars."
And of course,
Mhm.
he's never been there before.
Yeah.
Um,
But having to set up Ernest as being a shy kid who's afraid of adventure seems unusual.
Yeah.
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 What do I got down here?
I will say I do want to generally talk about Linda Cash in this movie
Yes, that's fair.
because in both of the other films that we have talked about that she's been in, now granted, in Ernest Rides Again, we both agreed her character was grating, but we could tell that she was doing good work. She just basically was written a bad character that was put in a bad place for that character to work.
Yeah.
And she was great in Ernest Goes to School.
Yeah.
In this one, she's really given next to nothing. But once again, her character is grating. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, she's not likable
Yeah.
at all. And I don't know if this was how it was written
Mhm.
or if this was how Linda Cash decided to play the character because it's not as grating, but similar to the way that she played the wife, Nan,
Yeah.
in Rides Again. So at this point, I'm just like, I mean, I will say I like that she's a little forthright.
Yeah.
She's not written the same as a typical woman in this film would be.
Yeah.
But I almost think, unfortunately, a typical woman in this film would have fit better for this story.
I don't know. I liked her better than the love interest we had from Slam Dunk Ernest.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
If only because like
Well, she's more of a character.
he's more of a character. Also, I just like her energy and her interactions with Varney. I think
I was about to say, I think that she and Jim work together very well.
I think she's one of the few people, people he's partnered with who's not like a true star, like Eartha Kitt or something like that.
Right.
Who understands the right energy you need to have to balance a scene with Jim Varney.
Yeah.
Because I do like that.
Yeah, I will say I tried to pull a production still that basically straight up looked like them in between shots just
Yes.
hanging out.
Yeah.
Because they're just taking, it's not even a candid, they're posing for the camera.
Yeah.
But they look like they're having a good time.
I imagine they
You
were.
know.
They're coming back for these. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the third one she did. This is the last time we get Linda.
This is the last time. It's true.
For
instance, one of my few notes about actual performances here was when she is kidnapped by Mr. What's his Bartlett, whatever.
Thompson.
Thompson.
And we haven't mentioned his bodyguard Bazoo.
Bazoo. Yeah.
Which I wanted to like Bazoo, but there's not a whole lot there.
Again, if you're going to go like the sort of James Bond secret agent route, like Bazoo has the opportunity to be the
Odd job.
the odd job of
Yeah.
this film. And you feel almost like that's kind of what they have in the back of their heads.
Yeah. And I mean, he does a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's just kind of like meh.
Yeah, he's just sort of a glorified, background.
Yeah.
For the most part. But when they kidnap her and they're torturing her, and she's tied to a lift.
Yeah.
It's like
the shot that I actually showed.
Yeah, the one you just showed. I liked her the way she played the character in that scene, which I assume is the way it's written, where she just does not fully appreciate how serious this is. Like these are actually bad guys. Like she's just it's being played very comic.
Well, and I will say I find it interesting that much like Ernest, she's a character that doesn't shut up.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I don't think is a great pairing.
Yeah, that
I will say at no point in this film do I ever want them to actually end up together. They really don't seem like a good match to me.
No. The film also is very schizophrenic about its attitude of whether Ernest reciprocates her feelings or not, because for the first half of the film, like she has an unrequited crush on him.
He likes her.
Yeah.
And she is at the very least says that he's not adventurous enough for her.
Yeah, true.
There is one single scene where basically he has turned her on enough that she wants to make out, but he's so uh, he's paying attention to something else and doesn't notice.
Yeah.
That's the one scene where it
Yeah.
flips. Every other scene,
Every other scene,
he's
it's
like,
sure.
let's make out, let's
Yeah.
kiss, let's be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she's just like, no.
Yeah. Which,
So,
and
I mean,
I don't like that dynamic of him just being pushy on her like that. And also it flips back afterwards when he then tries to convince the chief to marry them.
yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
That was weird. And I mean, obviously it went nowhere because it's right after that the bad guy comes in.
Yep, totally unnecessary. She's actively pushing back
I mean,
against this.
it feels like that was intended to get her out of the scene.
Yeah.
But we didn't need to get her out of the scene because she was put in a different situation immediately after because the bad guy showed up.
Because the bad guy shows up.
So that was really unnecessary. And honestly, yeah, like you said, because of the way that they have made steps, because now she's shown some interest. But yeah, she even when he says, can you marry us? She's like, you're gonna talk about this with me?
Yeah.
It's not like, oh no, I don't want to marry you. It's like, how about we have a conversation
Yeah.
here? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that made it feel really awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did. But
I will say though, so yeah, I mean, I love seeing Linda Cash in these films because you can tell, even if nobody else is, she is doing the work.
Yeah.
But I think of all of the characters, this is the least interesting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the wife in Ernest Scared Stupid wasn't great, but she was so annoying and so grating and so antagonistic that there was something there. Whereas this one, I don't really know how you make this character work right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a better way for Linda Cash to have played it. Yeah.
I mean, it basically just requires the character to be written differently, I think. That's
Yeah.
what a lot of this comes down to.
Yeah.
But
I will say I don't want to go away from this without talking about the harem scene.
Oh yeah, I know about that one, yeah.
Because to me, that is the single most interesting scene in this entire film. Because initially when they are captured, Ernest dresses up as Auntie Nelda to basically beat up Bazoo in disguise. And I will say, I wrote down, oh, Auntie Nelda's here. I don't remember what she did. This was not a...
Oh, I remember what she did. Because
I remember she beat up Bazoo. But
no, I remember because I actually thought it was kind of funny.
Okay, now I remember. It was the
It was the
actually,
ashes.
this wasn't bad. The ashes.
There was
wasn't
way
bad.
too much build up for it. It was a long, drawn out bit to finally result in
Agreed.
throw her dead husband's ashes at his face.
But yeah, so we get the Auntie Nelda bit, and you're right. That part's not bad. That part's actually pretty decent. But yes, then eventually they get kidnapped again, and they get separated. I know Renee initially goes to the harem. I don't remember what Ernest is doing, but eventually he sneaks into the harem and also goes in disguise as a harem girl. And of course, as is the joke, the girl that not Thompson, but Prince Kazim. I guess he's technically our lead baddie, but we spend more time with Mr. Thompson. It's so convoluted. Yeah, it really was unnecessary to have both of them. I mean, at the very least, if you're gonna have both of them, have an obvious hierarchy between the two of them. Because honestly, Prince Kazim is really presented more as a bumbling idiot than anything.
Kazim's basically here because you couldn't have the harem scene without him, I don't think.
Yeah.
But which would,
Yeah.
darn it, we have to give up the harem.
Yeah. But yeah, so of course he's the most attracted to Ernest
Ernest.
as the harem girl,
Yep.
which I'm like, okay, might be something you need to look into, just explore your sexuality, buddy. Nothing to be ashamed of. But yeah, so they basically, he's like flirting with Ernest and all this kind of stuff. And I will say parts of this I find it's bizarre, but it is funny adjacent, because like he keeps giving Ernest like different things to eat and stuff, and Ernest just puts them under his veil, and then there's this wah, 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 wah under the veil, and
Yeah.
then he brings it out, like he brings out a full like lamb leg,
Yeah.
completely eaten, and the same thing with like a watermelon slice, and
Yeah.
and like I said, it's just bizarre. I can't call it funny,
Yeah.
but it is interesting. It is
did at least-
definitely interesting.
Again, it wasn't good enough to say it was good. I did
No.
appreciate that. Again, I didn't even want to back it up, but when they finally got to the watermelon bit and he passed it under, I took note of the fact that it didn't cut. That it was a single take of him passing the watermelon.
Yeah, I thought that was
the lines
interesting
out. I was like,
too.
I respect the fact they did that in one take and figured out whatever they had to do to swap that out.
Yeah.
Because it would have been way too easy to just do a cutaway for a reaction shot and cut back, and then he pulls a rind out.
Right.
Because that is much more difficult to stage, because those rinds are large.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Man, what else?
Okay, thank you.
There was a lot of not that it was relevant to that particular scene, but one thing that I did think was a problem throughout this film is this, I think, was darker in multiple places than any other Ernest film, because there are multiple people who die in this film.
Oh, okay. You're talking about tonally.
Yes.
I mean,
I don't mean visually. Sorry, yeah.
I mean,
like
you're right. There are more, but at the same time, it's done in such a this film overall is so silly.
Yeah.
And so, like, I would say tonally, I feel like Ernest Goes to Camp is darker. Like, that film feels darker because it's treated more realistically.
It's dark. That's a darker in the sense that, like, it's actually deeper. Like the themes
Sure.
that we're working with are more serious and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like in this film, at the top, the fella who steals the eyes of a goalie, I'm pretty sure gets stabbed to death, kind of on screen.
Well, and then they eat him.
And then they eat him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the guy that steals from the people who stole gets trapped in a car with snakes.
Yeah. And then two guys get buried up to their heads and then like trampled by a rhino.
But again, it's so goofy.
But the thing is, it's not played necessarily as goofy. Like, those guys play it as terrified. As
Yeah, but did you really take it seriously?
I mean, it did seem like the kind of thing that someone I don't know. Having people murdered in an Ernest movie just seems severe to me.
I mean, yes, it's a little more. I mean, there's no blood or anything like that. It's a little more suggested violent.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it's the film is. I can't take the entire film seriously.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, yes, it is more suggested violence than most other films, but I don't see it as dark.
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't keep the rating they wanted if they had actually put the violence on screen. So
right, yeah,
that's too many people getting murdered in gruesome ways.
Yeah. I will say I did think it was interesting that, because we are introduced to that scene by seeing two henchmen basically buried up to their necks, and normally that would be like a snake or even like a lion or something like that, or something more. But it's a rhino, and it literally sounds like the rhino just kicks their heads off.
Yeah,
I will say Dorothy the rhino is a great shot of a beautiful animal.
Yeah.
There's actually some decent shots of some animals in this. There's that joke. I mean, it's not a great joke, but they do use the animals where Ernest is trying to get to the other side of the golf cart and the elephants keep moving. And he's just like, oh no, I'll go over here. Oh no, I'll go over here. Oh no, I'll go over here. You know, all the while he's bent over because he slept through the canopy for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely some interesting stuff. But yeah, Dorothy the attack rhino.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what
Well,
an
as soon as Dorothy got name checked, I was wondering, it's like, who is Dorothy going to turn out to be? Because I assume
Yeah.
it's not going to be, you know, a woman. But what is Dorothy going to
No.
turn out to be?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Since you mentioned the snakes, though, I did have a note about that.
Yeah.
One, I thought it was weird that they dumped a bunch of snakes in there and then just left their limo.
Yeah.
Apparently, they just have spare limos hanging around. But more than that, that weasel actor, the way he was playing that character, which is an over top stereotype, what that specifically reminded me of.
Uh-huh.
And you may remember this as the host of a bunch of Disney stuff, was
Uh-huh.
Jean from the DuckTales movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That which was also like a very heightened accent as that character.
Yeah.
And pretty much doing the same sort of like cowardly, henchman bit.
Yeah.
I
mean, they don't kill him in a car of snakes.
They don't kill him in car of snakes,
But,
but
yeah.
but no, the interaction in the car when he was just sort of having to, defend
Yeah.
himself, like that,
Yeah.
it all reminded me so much of Dijon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I
well-
I suppose you probably did too. Ernest's kidnapped in the U.S. He and Renee, they're put on a plane, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
They're flown over there, and they land. Did you see the chyron that said where they land? Because I did. I made a note of this.
Oh, I think I noticed it, but it wasn't like nothing sparked for it.
Yes, it was Bongani Airport, comma, Africa.
Okay.
There's no country. It is literally just Africa.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, given the fact that they're shooting it in South Africa, you think they might have wanted to go for South Africa, but no.
Yeah. No.
I
I mean, I think part of that.
I looked this
part
up. Bongani is in fact a place in South Africa. They could have
Okay.
said that, but
Well, I mean, I think part of it was because they were going so over the top.
Yeah.
They didn't want to fix it to a place
Yeah.
because they didn't want anybody to. I mean, I don't know how much this was actually a thought, but if you fix it to a place, it's more likely that people are going to be offended.
yeah,
That you're saying that about where they live. There's also, that people could just say, well, it's not like that there. So I think that's why they just called it Africa rather than fixing it to a place. Because I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The version of Africa that they are showing is not present day Africa.
Yeah.
It's not something that would exist, at least not largely in present day Africa.
Yeah.
So, they were trying to go over the top. They were trying to go stereotypical and, yeah, they wanted to do something that meant they had to show the least amount of reference.
Yeah. No, I mean, it just strikes me as something that's more recently been addressed, is that people wanting to treat in fiction just Africa as just sort of an undifferentiated whole. And
Yeah.
so, like, in the Batman comics a few years ago, they had I think it was Batwing was the Batman of Africa. It's like
Right.
it's a large territory as compared to Gotham.
I mean, I will say that's like a typical thing. Most times when people say Africa, they're just referring to the entire continent.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like that's a common thing,
Yeah,
honestly.
it is common, but usually if like his territory probably is not Africa. He probably has like a place
Sure.
in Africa he lives.
Yeah.
In the same way. And this got a
But
correct.
again, that's DC. It's probably a fictionalized place in Africa anyway.
But then you could just say he's this is where he's based out of.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling also got in trouble for that a few years ago when she established the other international schools of magic, and there was like one in China and one in the U.S. and one in Africa, and
Yeah.
it had to come back and narrow down specifically which country it was in Africa.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, I think that's just typical shorthand for
it is.
Yeah.
Exactly, it is.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that is typical.
I did know too that by virtue of shooting this in South Africa, when we had that opening flea market scene, which was very clearly shot at like South African flea market, other than like Slam Dunk Ernest, that resulted in a lot of diversity just in the background actors in that shot. Just like
Yeah, we've had two pretty diverse films in a row.
no, exactly.
I don't know if these are necessarily the films we wanted it in.
Not so much, no.
Especially this one, it's pretty messed up.
But by virtue of having to shoot it, in new locations, we had that as a set. I also made note here, and this is about the end of my notes, to be honest. Was that when we see Ernest's home, because obviously they had to recreate a home for Ernest to shoot the one scene at.
Yeah.
The times we'd seen his home before in like Ernest Goes to Jail, or Ernest Saves Christmas or whatnot. More so in Jail, where it was just really Rube Goldbergian inside,
Right.
chaos.
Right.
Here it's like they tried to recapture that on like a flea market budget. So it's kind of mildly cluttered, but that's about it. It just it doesn't nearly recapture the chaos of the earlier Worrell homes.
Right. I will say I've got a couple of other things written down. Number one, the whole firewood bit was silly. I mean, I thought that there actually could have been some interesting, earnest physical humor there, and there really wasn't. And then she somehow built a roaring fire without firewood. I'm like, how did she manage to do that? What did she burn?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can start a fire with a lot of different things, but keeping it going, you need something more substantial.
Yeah.
So, but she had a big blazing fire without firewood.
Yeah.
Okay. There was also, and honestly, like, I will say the main thing about this bit is I'm like, I feel like I've seen this somewhere else before. I feel like this wasn't unique for this film, but it did catch me out of nowhere. I think the very first scene where we see Prince Kazim, we see him with a golf putter and he's like talking to Mr. Thompson or whatever. And then at the end, he shoots his putt and then it goes into a servant's mouth.
Yeah.
Which I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like that was so unexpected. I actually thought that was a good bit. But I'm like, I feel like I've seen that somewhere else before.
I feel like I've seen that somewhere before too.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just like, that actually is an interesting bit, I mean, unfortunately it's in service of a character that really doesn't amount to much. It would have been more interesting if, again, if they had, because at times Mr. Thompson seems more arch and menacing.
Yeah.
And then for a little bit, it feels like they're building up Prince Kazim to be the ultimate bad guy.
Yeah.
They never can decide.
No.
If that had been, if Mr. Thompson had just been his underling and he falls away or he ends up being, killed by Dorothy at some point or something like that, and then Prince Kazim takes over, that actually would have been a really interesting way to build up this guy as just really not caring about people. Yeah. And in a slightly comical way. And also hats off to that guy Because the way that he did it, like he reached out with his mouth to grab that golf ball.
Yes.
He was
yes,
like,
he did.
oh. Yeah, I was like, not much to it, but great job, guy. Great job. The other thing I wrote down, and once again, Prince Kazim and his putter, there is a point at which they've caught Ernest and Renee again, and Renee is now dressed as the harem girl. And I will say, Renee wakes up poolside dressed as a harem girl, which I found gross.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so that means that they changed her while she was asleep. Okay. But yeah, she wakes up and he has this entire conversation basically saying that you're going to work for me now, blah, blah, blah. And he ends the speech holding up his putter and saying, I think you'll find it extremely pleasurable. And then like strokes down the handle of the putter. And I'm just like,
I missed
whoa! That's the first time I've seen a masturbation joke in an Ernest film. Because I mean that can't be construed as anything else.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, at least and they kept it in. They let him do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he straight up like strokes the thing. And I'm just like, my God. I mean, if you're going to do that kind of joke, fine. It just it seems a little out of place in an Ernest movie.
It's very out of place in an Ernest movie. Does not belong.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, other than I will say my very last note at the end of this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That was just I was like, wow.
No,
okay, that was a movie.
It lived down to expectations.
Yeah.
By the way, I looked up earlier because I was going to log this on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Let me double check this actually to make sure that this is actually out of 5. I think. Yeah, Letterboxd scores it out of 5.
Okay.
Ernest Goes to Africa has a 1.8.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, it's not great.
It
Honestly, I'm surprised it has that much.
Well, because I think it's hard to give anything below like a half a point. So
yeah. So why is everybody not giving it half a point?
Well, I mean, the top review currently has a half a point, and then a point and a half, and then 2 points, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. So those are all the folks who wrote reviews.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The earliest review here says, at least 8 people die in this movie. Ernest takes 4 or 5 lives. I'm not sure who specifically they're referring to, but
I was going to say, I'm trying to remember who Ernest killed. I mean, he does, his like, his fighting with his yo-yo, but I don't think he actually sends anybody to his death. To their deaths.
I don't remember. He
because he never uses any conventional weapons.
Well, he uses the jar to hit Bazoo. Do we ever see Bazoo again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. After that, yeah, we see, but yeah, because it's after that they do the Dorothy thing, and Mr. Thompson's like, you should be visiting Dorothy.
Okay.
Because you let them escape. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure who it would be. I don't remember who else died.
I don't. Yeah. Apparently they don't matter. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to mention before we move forward?
I'll mention this because it was literally my first note. Is we've complimented some of the openings for these other films. The opening for this one was just so slapdash.
I wrote down, and they haven't done an intro like this in a while.
Yeah.
But I wrote down feels like a cheap version of a classic Ernest intro.
Yeah.
Because like this is the type of intro that they would have done in one of the first few movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels really low budget,
Yep.
really, cheap.
I literally wrote opening made in half hour.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Which was not an auspicious way to begin this film, and it
No.
just kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we rank these things, I don't think it's unless Army turns out to be astonishing, bad.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I've already seen stills from Army that look more promising than
Yeah.
this movie.
Wait, I'll say one last thing, and then we can get on to our questions, which is
Sure.
that every online reference I can see that I've seen so far, Wikipedia and whatnot, spells Eyes of Egoli with an I, Igoli.
Yeah, same.
We see it on a screen though. Someone sends a message to Africa and spells it with an E,
EG.
Egoli.
I mean, I will say I sounds actually more accurate.
But they say Egoli, don't I?
Egoli.
Egoli. Well, it's pronounced with a long E. Egoli.
Right. I mean, in a lot of languages
No,
that the I is pronounced as a long E.
Oh, exactly. The I is
Yeah.
pronounced as a long E, but it is still a long E.
Yeah.
So no, I wrote it down as a long I when I was just hearing it originally, and then
Yeah.
you see someone literally type on screen when they're sending an email or whatever to Kazim. They type it with an E, and so I don't know if this is.
I mean, that might have just been that one guy, one production guy.
It may have been, but
yeah.
it perhaps speaks to the level of competence on display here that like their central MacGuffin of this film they
They don't know how to spell. Yeah.
spelling for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I had the DVD, I could always I could try to turn on the subtitles later and try to discover if does it spell it there. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to find the script for this film. I don't know that I'd want to though.
Don't want to.
I'm not that interested.
No. I already have enough of an internet history showing me looking up stuff about this film.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let us go ahead and get right into our segments. Let us start with our moment. This is, of course, the best or most interesting scene in the film. I think for a lot of these, we're going to go with most interesting. I think that's where we are now.
Yep.
But yeah, so Lauren, what did you pick as your moment?
Oh, darn it. All right. I'm halfway tempted to just say the very first scene of the movie where we just hear what I initially thought might have been Ladysmith Black Mambazo. Just because I liked the music.
Sure.
But there's literally no dialogue there.
Yeah.
And with no regular characters. And I don't want to just use like a track drop, a needle drop as being my favorite thing.
Yeah.
So there was something I cited earlier though that I did enjoy the scene. And that was and this got cut off a little bit when it sort of changes tone. But I did enjoy the bit where Linda Cash's Renee is being tortured and is just not taking the entire matter seriously. So she's just treating the whole thing lightheartedly. These guys just don't know what they're up to. I like the clash of tones there. And I thought she was funny.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was hard because again, it really comes down to most interesting.
Yeah.
And honestly, even though there was a lot of bizarre stuff in this, it lost my attention a lot.
Same.
But I definitely considered the groveling bit as we mentioned, when he's in the brown face, unfortunately. The harem girl scene was very interesting. Now that you bring it up, the Auntie Nelda scene in this actually was okay. I I will say though, it came down to two scenes. One of them I do want to definitely give honorable mention to the human golf hole.
Yep.
Because if nothing else, that extra just going the extra mile to like suck up that golf ball, like good on you, dude.
Yep.
Good on you. But I think I'm ultimately gonna give it to the New York redneck.
Yeah.
The guy who gets pushed out of his chair, dressed fully in overalls and a straw hat, and he goes, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?"
Ian
It's
Yule
so
is his name, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Ian
Okay.
Yule. Yes.
All right. Yeah. I think that was just so bizarre. I
Yes.
have to give my ew moment to that. All right. So
That's
now
also- wait,
sorry, go
he
ahead.
was had an extensive film career in South Africa from the late
Okay.
60s to the early aughts.
Yeah.
Mostly playing a soldier. So,
All right.
yeah. And in fact, he was in fact a member of the British Army Royal Artillery.
All right.
And he had a fairly extensive military career before he was an actor. Yeah, anyhow.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. All right. Well, then let us go now into our Neldy Award, which is, of course, the award that we give to the best slash most interesting character. Again, rather difficult. Where are you going? Mr.
Okay,
Collins?
so for part of this film, I was leaning towards Linda Cash, because like I at least enjoyed the performance she was doing.
Yeah, I was about to say, at the very least, you can tell that she's competent. You know,
Yeah.
she's doing the job that she's been asked to do.
Yep. And I went into this honestly hoping that I would enjoy her again, and I did. I thought she did a fine job. Given the material she was saddled with,
But she really wasn't given much.
she wasn't given much. But when I had to sit and think about who I was going to give this award to, I thought like I think I have given it to Linda Cash twice already. And just to switch things up again, because there was one other performance in this
I was
film.
gonna say we've given it to Linda Cash every
Both
time
times.
she showed
Yes,
up.
every other time, exactly. So just to spread the love a little bit, there was one other performance in the film again, which I think was underwritten, even more underwritten than Renee was. Incidentally, Renee Loomis is a great name, I want to say, which is underwhelming compared to some of the other names in the film. But even though it's an underwritten role, I still did think Jamie Bartlett did a pretty fine job as Mr. Thompson.
Honestly, I agree. He was the most interesting. I mean, like I said, he was the most menacing villain.
Yeah.
And you're right. He wasn't given a whole lot to work with, but I think he actually did a decent job with what he was given.
He holds the screen pretty well when he's supposed to like be the big bad. And you want to contrast this with something fairly similar. Think back to like the big bads who were doing kind of similar roles in Ernest Rides Again, and I don't remember any of them. You know, he at least is interesting here. He has an interesting rapport when he has to deal with Ernest or with Renee.
Yeah.
And yeah, I enjoyed what he wasn't at least phoning it in as much as you could for something like this.
Right.
But so when he was on screen, the movie was just a little bit better.
Sure.
So I'm going to give Jamie Bartlett as Mr. Thompson, who also could have used a better name. Again, Renee Loomis, good name. Mr. Thompson,
yeah,
less so.
I think that they stuck to just the last name because they thought it would sound more menacing.
Mr. Thompson, yes.
But Mr. Thompson.
That's the fake name they give Homer Simpson in the Cape Fear episode. Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why.
Well, probably not. Have you ever seen that bit?
No.
Oh, Homer has to go in the witness protection program, and they're having to tell him it's like your name is Homer Thompson. Okay.
Oh.
You're going to say hello, Mr. Thompson, and you say hello. Okay. Hello, Mr. Thompson. Hello, Mr. Thompson. It's like, are they? They're talking to you. It's like, no, we're gonna stomp on your foot and say hello. Anyhow, but no, Jamie Bartlett was fine. I also again think that he's supposed to be playing the big bad in an Ernest movie, and I think he had the sort of the right level for that.
Yeah.
Kazim is playing it too silly.
Yeah.
And also you run the risk of just playing it too flat and dark and serious. But
Right.
I think
Right.
Bartlett is tuned in about right for this film.
Yeah.
As best
And
as,
honestly, ultimately, we understood his motivation,
and we understood his motivation exactly.
which was the problem with the Rides Again villains. We
Yes.
didn't understand why they were going so far so fast.
No.
All right. So, yeah, I will say I am also going to give it to a character that doesn't get much. A character that I actually would have liked to see a little bit more of. And I'm just gonna say right now, I'm probably stretching here. But you know what? Honestly, when I think about it, it's the character that I enjoyed most in this film.
Golf ball guy.
No, actually, I'm giving it to Dorothy the Attack Rhino.
Oh, okay, yes. Dorothy was good in her scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if I wanted to, I might also expand it to all of the actual animals. We don't get a lot of animals,
Surprisingly,
but,
no.
but we do get a few animals in scenes, and I actually enjoyed when they were on screen. So
Dorothy does great in her couple of minutes. Several seconds, to be honest, of screen time. It's a pity. Wikipedia doesn't indicate that she did much more after this.
yeah.
Well,
honestly, I really feel like Dorothy was really just stock footage.
Oh no, I know it is. Yes, but it's
I don't think they even recorded that for this film.
No,
I
don't.
was just
I just wanted to
footage
pretend
of a rhino.
Dorothy had a film career. Like Dorothy was an aspiring rhino actress, and like this was going to be like her big break. That she finally got into like an American film, and then just like.
But it didn't do very well.
And then it just didn't.
She didn't get the notoriety that she thought it would.
And her and Dorothy's film career just sort of cratered there at the very beginning. It's a sad story, really.
Yeah. But you know she did some good things with her life. You know,
yes.
I'm sure that she's happy. You know, her and her family.
I'm sure she is now.
Found a nice fulfilling career. You know, at the Johannesburg Zoo.
Yep.
All right. So now it is time to get to the question, the most important question, the question so important that Ernest himself never stopped asking it. And that is this: Lauren, when it comes to this film, Ernest Goes to Africa, do you or do you not know what he means, Fern?
Yeah, this no. It's this was rough. Like I'd said before, Ernest Rides Again was rough. We both thought Slam Dunk Ernest was rough. We both knew going into this was going to be an endeavor.
Yeah.
And there were at best here like glimpses of things that in entirely different hands might have been turned into something decent.
Right.
But yeah, basically nothing here is functional.
Unequivocally, no. I don't know what they're getting at here. I mean, I agree. There's really not much to work with. I will say we said with Slam Dunk Ernest that it was so straight down the line that it got boring at times.
Yeah.
You know, and then they went crazy trying to make it more interesting. This one started crazy because who pitches Ernest Goes to Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, the idea of Ernest as a clueless spy, there's a pitch. There's an idea. But I mean, I think it must have ultimately come from the fact that they were shooting in Johannesburg.
They were shooting in Africa. They're shooting in Africa to go build a plot around him going to Africa. I don't think there's anything but intrinsically wrong with that. I mean, like there's
but then they're going for lowest hanging fruit. And it was rotten already.
It was because the opportunity that shooting in South Africa should present you, and they do a tiny bit of this.
Yeah,
is the fact that they just have the vistas and like the landscapes and the animals to work with.
Yeah.
Like, granted, it's gonna be hard to shoot Ernest around animals too much unless you go to a facility for them.
Yeah.
But like, everything else largely shot in Tennessee and Canada. If you can shoot Ernest in an exotic landscape, give us that on screen. That's at least visually interesting.
Yeah.
Give him something that sort of plays off the specific nature of Africa. Again, like
Yeah.
the animals.
Yeah.
Granted, you'll fake Ernest riding an elephant. Why does Ernest not ride an elephant in this movie? Or get stepped on by
I was
one.
gonna say he rode a cannon, for crying out loud.
Like Ernest needs to interact with animals outside of the opening sequence.
I will say they might have had a hard time licensing that. Like
They
getting
may have,
permission for
but
that.
again, you find some way to work around that, because what you end up with is a jewel smuggling plot at the core of this thing. And I went back and I read Nathan Rabin's review last night, and he pointed out correctly, because I thought of this too. Why were there so many kids films in the 80s and 90s that had like jewel smuggling plots? It's the absolute center of the Chipmunks movie. And
Yeah.
it's also kind of at the center of like Great Muppet Caper to some extent.
Yeah.
And I think there are others I'm not thinking of. Like jewel smuggling was just a thing that they figured for a decade or more kids were into. And yeah, that they have a dumb MacGuffin. They have just stereotypes, and like I said,
I was about to say,
the worst
if
of it.
you look, there's a reason they don't show us the eyes of a goalie for extended period. They look like cheap.
They're little tchotchkes.
You know,
they're just garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, cheap crystal, baubles.
Yeah, they're not even like pink or blue or something like that, like you would expect the jewels to be. They're just clear. They're glass.
Yeah.
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 So no, I do not know. I mean, I know what he was. I know what he means in the sense of we have to film a film in Africa.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I was about to say, it really just, I would be surprised if this film went through more than one rewrite. It really just feels like first ideas.
Yeah. Simply because I said it a couple of episodes ago when we watched School that I admired the direction of School. Watching Slam Dunk and now Ernest Goes to Africa have reminded me, it's like I don't like John Cherry's direction. Like when I
will say it didn't stick out as much when they had a better budget.
Yeah, it didn't.
But you're right. I mean, I actually wrote down. I mean, and I think part of it is that a lot of this is shot on location.
Yeah.
But the whole film looks different.
Yeah.
And it looks cheaper.
It does look cheaper.
I mean, it is, I'm sure.
I mean, especially at the top when you're just like shooting in the waffle restaurant and whatnot. Like it reminded me of Birdemic or something like that point. It's like I feel like even the sound quality feels worse somehow. Like I halfway wondered it, and it was only briefly, and so I don't think that was the problem. But like in my head, I'm wondering, like, did they even have boom mics for this shot? Like, because it feels just so direct to video in so many ways.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we're thoroughly entrenched in that ethos now. Yeah.
Yep. At least there's not much more to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the film. I will say this is the point. Well, actually, you're already on the Patreon, so you know all about it. Make sure that you listen to all of the stuff that we have available. Lauren, anything you want people to know about?
Right now, you can find me on the socials. Lauren Collins. Search my name. You'll find me. That's about it.
All right. Well, I will say that we are going to be back at least one more time, talking about the final film of the Worrelliverse, and that is Ernest in the Army. So come back to, at the very least, see if that one's any better than this one. We will see. But yes, we will see you next time. But until then, moo. Know what I mean?